Welcome back. Today, me and a special guest, Mark Haggard, are going to be talking about is a 30-year versus a 15-year doesn't make sense. And, if you are a Dave Ramsey fan, I used to be a huge Dave Ramsey fan. I used to listen to him all the time. But here's something I think he gets wrong. He always says go with a 15-year mortgage. And I think the smarter way to go is a 30-year mortgage, hands down. So me and Mark are going to talk about the differences between a 30 and 15, what makes the most sense, and why we say the 30 over the 15 every time. Hey, so thanks so much for joining us, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Scotty. I appreciate you bringing me in here. This is actually a great topic. I get these questions all the time. Should I do a 15? Again, I'll be paying that off sooner, and or should I do a 30? And so there's a lot of things Dave Ramsey gets right. Okay, I really appreciate the direction that he's going. It's all about getting out from underneath that debt ASAP. So I really get that. And but again, there are advantages to sticking with the 30 and so on. And we'll discuss some of those items.
Yeah, like I said, I used to listen to Dave Ramsey for years. I was really big on the debt thing, and I think there's a lot of things he gets right. I think credit card debts are bad, but I think home ownership, and especially in America, gives you so much flexibility and just affordability wise, getting into the home. Like, you can't start building wealth in a home if you can't afford the payment, right? And right now we're living in a time where, homes aren't as affordable as they used to be. And if you've been listening to Dave Ramsey over the last, say, 5 years, you missed out on a lot of appreciation while you're waiting to be able to afford that 15-year payment. So I think that's just, that take on it as a whole is just like, hey, it stops you getting into the house sooner because you can't afford it. So then you're like, hey, I can't afford it. And then what are you going to do then? So that's the number one sticking point, right? I think.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And that is the challenge. And again, we've discussed this many times, Scotty. A lot of this is just getting in the game. You got to get started ASAP. So as soon as you can get in, it's like being on a conveyor belt. Okay, now you're moving through, and you got your appreciation, you got your pay down, and that's great. And to your point, if I'm having to wait, many years before I can actually participate, then you're not getting that appreciation. You're not really truly feeling what I would argue is a lot of the American dream. Okay, I'm a huge real estate proponent, and real estate is really a wealth creator. And the sooner you can get into it, the sooner you can start creating that wealth and really having that thing. So that's really the idea here, is to help people to really get in and start experiencing that dream.
Yeah, and I think so what he does get right, which I do appreciate, is that if you can afford it on a 15, you're going to have the higher payment. You're going to save a little bit on interest, right? We typically see somewhere between maybe 0.5% to 3/4, maybe somewhere. I don't know exactly. It's going to depend on your credit scores and how much you're putting down and all that stuff like that. But you're going to see better interest rates, apples to apples, which is great. And you're going to build, you're going to pay less interest over the life of the loan, and you build equity faster. Those are all great things. But I think when you flip it over to look at the 30-year mortgage, why a lot of people go that way is, number one, you have a lower monthly payment. People are buying houses on monthly payments, right? They don't buy them on the cost of the home. If everyone was worried about just the cost, they'd be just looking at the price. And, but we live in a world where everyone else is buying on a 30-year mortgage. So you're at a disadvantage. You can't get into the home. You can't afford the home. If everyone is driving up the prices based on a 30-year mortgage, you're playing a different game, right? Than they're playing.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and then so you do pay higher interest on 30-year mortgage, and you have slower build up, right? But here's the thing about the lower payment: it does give you more flexibility as life happens, because I think we all have this idea that, hey, we're going to run this race, and we're going to, of life, and we're going to go down this course. But what life happens, right, Mark? I mean,
you betcha.
You know just as well as I do,
Yeah.
best laid plans, right?
Yeah, you bet. You bet. I can't tell you how many times just throughout my life personally, it's like, okay, yeah, you're feeling like, okay, this is a path that we're going to be on forever. Okay. And this is going to be just great. And then all of a sudden, whoa, here come the brakes. And, you kind of get blindsided a little. Sometimes life just hits you in the face, and that's okay. So again, we kind of want to prepare for that. So, but again, using some of the strategies that Dave Ramsey has laid out, I think are great to think about. But again, like you said, with the 15-year mortgage, if you do a 30 instead, that at least gives you the opportunity to take a breath, especially during those challenging times, where I can turn around and say, okay, yeah, maybe I can't quite make that 15-year mortgage payment, but I don't have, now I don't have the issue where I'm not able to make my payment because I can actually cover that. So, but the whole piece here comes down to the fact that with a 30-year mortgage, my payment isn't as large, so I can have that strategy in place. Again, we can show you how, when you do your 30-year mortgage, we get what they call an amortization schedule. And what that schedule, what that shows you is how your payments are paying down principal. And what you'll notice, the majority, many, many years at the beginning of that 30-year mortgage is all going to interest. And this is what Dave Ramsey doesn't like. And I appreciate that. I don't like it either. Okay. I don't like having to pay the interest. But again, it is what it is. But what you can do is, as you're looking at that amortization schedule, again, there are things that we can help you with to help pay down. We're actually looking at that amortization schedule. If you have some money that comes in, like say from a refund, tax refund, you can take some of that money and pay it towards your principal. And by doing that, it literally moves payments off of that amortization schedule. And so that's the thing that's actually really fun about it. So we can show you some of those strategies too.
New wife, we buy a home on a 30-year mortgage, and then hey, we decided we're gonna have kids, right? Life's gonna happen. You're gonna have kids, maybe have a second kid. Maybe she decides to be a stay-at-home wife now, right? So the flex now, oh, we got to sell the house, or we got to refinance to a 30 because we can't afford to keep the house. Where if you just bought it on 30, you paid a little bit extra front, and then you get to the point where, okay, life happens. I don't make as much money now. I need to I want her to stay home. We have daycare. We have all these other costs. I'm not stressing out. I can just switch it back. I don't have to keep paying it like a 15. I can just keep paying it like a 30 now. I have more flexibility on my income. One of the things that Dave Ramsey says is, hey, your biggest wealth building tool is your income, right? But your income isn't always guaranteed, especially when you're working for somebody else. If you have an employee, they can lay you off. You can change jobs. You can get downsized. A lot of stuff is going to happen along the way. It's not like when my parents, started off and they worked for the same company for 30 years, retired and got a pension. Like that doesn't happen anymore. So the income isn't guaranteed. A lot of people want to have their, wife be able to stay at home. I think it's great as far as I would prefer that. When I was married and young, and my first wife, she stayed at home and worked part-time for a lot of times. And I love that. Now, would she even have that option if we were on a 15-year mortgage? No, right? It would have been, oh, we can't do it. You need to work full time. So it allowed us to have that flexibility to be able to live life and say, hey, I've gotten a little bit of raise. You make decent money. We can afford to stay in this house and have our kids versus you having to work full time and nobody gets to stay home with the kids. So I think that right there alone would be the number one reason. We don't need any more reasons other than that. But let's go on to, other than the flexibility, I think the other thing that's great that I want to touch on right here is inflation.
Sure.
Now, inflation can be your friend, right, Mark? Especially with a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, it actually can. Yeah, definitely. Again, as inflation, as prices are coming up, you're locked in. Okay, that's actually another thing too, Scotty. I just remember we haven't touched on. The ideal thing here is that you've got a fixed rate. So that's the other side of it too. We're talking fixed rate 30-year mortgage. Okay, the variable rates they can be challenging as rates start coming back on up again, and I know we've experienced a lot of that over the past years. So that's as an industry. So again, the whole idea here is you've locked in your rate, and now you can really get that strategy around that. So you know what you have to cover, and then when you can actually do a little bit more, that makes a big difference to be able to just pay down that extra principal. But when you do that now, is that if you have some of that extra money, when you send it into the mortgage to the mortgage company, you need to make sure that you're putting this for principal only. Make sure it's principal only. Otherwise, they'll just apply it to the next payment. Okay, so you'll still be paying that interest. So as you're making that extra payment, that's what you want to make sure that it is principal only, and that way you are truly covered. But again, So getting back to our topic here, as far as inflation is concerned, your property is going to be going up in value. Okay, that's the thing that's great about this, is that we do have appreciation because of inflation. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, and again, market conditions, your value is going to go up and down, so on and so on. But it does one of those, where it's up and down, every day, but it's slowly moving up. So that's the idea that we're looking at, because over a 20, 30-year period, you're going to have some really good appreciation. And again, with that inflation, that is our friend, especially when we've locked in our rate. Okay, we've locked in our rate. Our payment doesn't go up. Okay, but inflation, our value does. And so as our value is going up too, one thing we have, the term we haven't touched on yet is net worth. What happens with my net worth? My net worth goes up because my value of my property goes up. So I'm getting more equity. And again, that's another fancy term. What does that mean? That's what's the value of my property compared to what I owe on that property. And that difference in between there is my equity. That's my value. And that becomes part of my net worth. So that's why real estate as an investment creates wealth, because the more property I own, the more equity I have, the more net worth I have. Okay, so I hope that helps.
No, that's really good. And me and Mark are going to be doing another video on, like, is your home really an investment? So be sure to check out that video after this. But sticking with the idea of inflation here, inflation, it's the Fed. The Fed's role is to keep inflation around 2%. That's their goal. That's their goal. So they're saying, like, hey, our goal is to have 2% inflation every year. Now, some years they're below that, some years they're above that. But if you're telling me when I buy something that their goal is to have inflation 2% a year, that means if they hit their goal every year, my, say, $400,000 home is going to appreciate 2% likely with that, because the cost of building goes up, the cost of land goes up, the cost of labor goes up every year. And those are likely going to be a little bit higher than what the actual inflation is, because all those people want to make a little money too. And so, just taking the idea of this example, if you take the $400,000, $400,000 home going up 2%, I mean, that's $8,000 that went up in 1 year, right? And then it compounds on that. It doesn't just do another 8 year. It goes a little bit more than that, because you get the inflation. That's how interest works, right? So you go a little bit more each year. So I like seeing the house as a hedge against inflation almost more than it is like an appreciation of the home. It's almost like just keeping up with. So it's like you're buying something that you're not putting 100% down on. You're leveraging up. Likely, you're doing 3.5%, 5%, 20%, 10%, whatever it is. The average is probably 9%. Right? So you don't. If you don't know this, you don't have to put down 20% to get into a home. If you don't know that. But even if you did put down 20%, you're leveraging 5 to 1, right? So you can get in that home, $400,000 home. Like, Mark, what does that cost you down payment wise on it? On a $400,000 home, putting down 5%, right? What does that look like?
That's about $20,000.
$20,000, and your home is going to appreciate in the first year probably $8,000. In year two, another $8,000 if you're doing 2%. So you've gotten your money back essentially after a couple of years in just home appreciation, right? So it's not like it's you put your money in the house and you got to pay for it, but you got to pay to live anywhere, right? It's not like you get to live for free somewhere. Like, oh, I'm going to go live on the street. Well, if you're doing that, it's a different discussion we're having. But I mean, I think inflation, it's you got to see it as a feature, and you can see it as a feature in real estate to help you protect your assets in a way, because your car's going down in value. You might not be getting the return on your bank account. You might be getting 1%. Inflation's 3 or 4% a year, and so you're losing money. Unless you're getting a raise every year, you're losing money. So the home is one of the ways, and we'll talk about it more in our other video, how your home can be an investment or a tool for you. That we haven't touched on is investment opportunity in the 30-year versus the 15. If you have extra money that you can then invest because you aren't paying a 15-year mortgage, you're paying a 30-year mortgage, where if, let's say an example, if you're that $400,000 home, if you do a 15 versus a 30, apples to apples, you're probably close to $1,000 a month difference, right? in payment.
Right.
I mean, ballpark it, right?
Right.
So like
Right.
that's an extra $1,000 a month that you can choose to do whatever with. Some of that what we talked about, like having less bills, it's more affordable. You can get in the home sooner. You can
Right.
you can have more flexibility for paying for daycare and kids and stuff like that because kids are expensive. I don't know if you know that kids
Yes, they
are
are.
expensive, right? And then you can also take that money and put it into the stock market, right? If you want,
Right.
right? You can
Absolutely.
invest. You can put in your 401k. You can do an IRA. You can just put it in. You have an extra $1,000 a month to do something else with. You can go save that $1,000 a month for 3 years, and then you can go buy a rental property. I mean, you can invest back in real estate again with that
Exactly.
money that you saved. So I mean, there's so much you could do with an extra, say, $1,000 a month, other than just paying down the mortgage. Because here's the
Absolutely.
crutch that I'm going to probably die on here. Even if I pay off my mortgage 15 years sooner, great. I got extra money that I can do whatever I want with now. But I spent all that money the last 15 years, and all that money is tied up in the home. I can't like
Right.
do any. I paid it off. Great. I got paid for a house. Now what? What can I can't like invest it. It's just dead. It's dead money sitting there in a way, right? I believe the 15-year versus 30. If you're 65 and buying a home, maybe you should be doing a 15. But if you're under 65, probably even at 65, I don't even know if it makes sense. But like I could see, hey, you want to pay down your debt, not have bills to pay. But you can always do a reverse mortgage, start pull out equity later too. So it's like
Yep.
I
Sure.
think the house is a tool that in banking that you should use to your advantage versus just seeing it as a place to live and like because even if I pay it off, Mark, right, I still got taxes and insurance, right,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's
You
not
do.
going away.
Yeah, yeah, no, again, it becomes an asset for you. I mean, it's definitely something that you can do something with, and that's the other side of it as well, is that if I have a property that's free and clear, great. Okay, now what do I want to do with that? But see, this is where again, a lot of this, as you're looking at buying a home, it's not just buying the home. You got to look a little bit down the road as well. What do I want to do with this? Because see, here's another thing too that I was going to come back around to on Scotty to say, hey, maybe a 15-year does make sense. What if I'm buying this house? What if I'm in the military? Okay, and I know I've been moved to this location, and I'm only going to be here for 3 or 4 years. Do I want to do a 30-year mortgage? Okay, or maybe I just want to do a 15. Okay, maybe I want to do something so I can have a lot of buy down or pay down on principal. Okay, during that 3-year period. So maybe I do want to do a 15. Okay, maybe it makes more sense. So, but again, you've got to look at the strategy. What is it you ultimately wanting to do? And people always laugh at me. And again, we'll talk about this in our investment video. But I always say, you make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell. And they always look at me sideways. What do you mean? What do you mean? I walk away with a check when I sell. Yeah, you do. But the thing is that you got to buy it right. Okay. And you've got to think about, why am I buying this? Okay. Yes, I'm buying it to live. I'm also buying it as an investment. So what am I ultimately trying to do here? Okay. So, again, once I get in, I need to have a strategy as to how I'm going to get out of this. And then that also helps to determine whether I do want to do a 15 or a 30 or more.
Yeah, no, and I think we are not going to pigeonhole people and say, hey, you have to do a 30. I mean, I had a client just this last month that was looking at it and said, hey, looking at this, you can afford this 15, like you can afford this home at a 15-year mortgage. Do you want to do this? I offered it as an option. He decided ultimately, like, no, I have some bills the next couple of years that I know I want to save that extra money to be able to do stuff to the house because he's just buying it and he wants to make some changes to the home, right? And that's the other thing we didn't touch on is like maybe you buy the home, but you don't want to just leave it as is, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to put no more money in this house. I mean, I myself put a lot of money back into our home. We built, I mean, in this room, we built, custom cabinets for this office.
Right.
We did custom cabinets upstairs for, built-ins. We're looking at redoing the floors. We did some stuff outside. This house already had a pool, but we're looking at doing some stuff outside to make it a little bit more enjoyable. I planted some trees. I planted some bushes. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is adding value back to the house, but I might not be able to do any of this stuff if I didn't have extra money, right? Because I was paying on a 15-year because everything was going towards the mortgage and I couldn't enjoy my home that I'm staying in, right? Because it's all going back to the mortgage payment, right? I just
Right.
like I read a book a long time ago. It was called Your Life or Your Money. And it was a great idea. It was like, hey, you should only spend money on things that bring you joy and happiness.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, like, why are you spending money on it? And like, one of the things that I could say in this 15 versus 30 was like, if I just put extra money towards the mortgage payment, or paid it like a 15, is that going to really bring me any joy to have, like, oh, I got more equity in my home? Great, but what can I do with it? Right now, it makes me bring
Right.
joy to have
Right.
plants in the yard and a patio and a nice chair to sit out there with an umbrella. I can enjoy the outside of my yard versus just like, well, I didn't do anything outside. This is just grass out there, but it's all dead because I don't water it because I got to pay all
Right.
that money towards my mortgage payment right here, and I got to sit in this house and keep the
Exactly.
AC really high and be all hot and sweaty so I can save money. Like, what's the goal of life if we're just gonna just like, it's all about collecting money and building wealth, right? Like, it's not the
Yeah.
end all be all,
Agreed.
I don't think. So
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think you're hitting on something that's also very important. And this is another thing too, as everybody's going through the mortgage process, you hear us talk about terms like, what's your ratios? Okay, what kind of pre-loan ratios and then post-loan ratios? What are those things all about? Okay, and how does that all come in? Because we want to make sure that you're not getting overburdened. Okay, by your payment, because just to Scotty's point, you need to have a life too. It's great to have a home, okay, and be buying your house. That's wonderful, but I don't want to be I don't want to be mortgage poor, okay, to where all my money's going into my mortgage and I'm not able to have that life. I'm not able to take care of the yard like I want to, or do some fix up to the house. That is important, and so there's a lot of value that comes into that as well. So again, that's why those ratios are very important, and that we're not getting over the top of those, to make sure that the borrower truly can have a good, nice life regarding that whole
yeah.
piece. So,
Well, yeah, and I always tell clients, hey, you don't want to be like, cash poor, or house poor, where you can't do anything else. You can't go on trips. You
exactly.
can't do anything else. Where, your house is ultimately someplace you lay your head, but like, it's not going to be, it shouldn't be everything to you, right? It should be a place you should make it your home. You should make it, a place that you love to be. People have coming in. It's not just an investment and like that, as far as like, hey, how much money can I get out of this thing? And when I die, how much can I give to my kids, kind of thing. I don't think it's
Right.
that, right? I think it's more
Right.
than that. So
Exactly. Agreed.
that's why, again, like, I'm biased towards the 30 year because that gives me all the flexibility to do all those things we discussed.
This has been a great conversation. I think the 30 versus 15, again, it comes back down to the client and what really is best for them and what their situation is. But again, Scotty and I are real good about looking at long term. It's not just, hey, let's just get to this closing. It's like, okay, great, get to the closing, but then what are you going to do after the fact? Okay, what are you looking to do with this home, with this property? So that again, we can make sure that we're setting you up for success. So just kind of bringing down that path. There's a lot of advantages to having the 30-year mortgage because of the flexibility you can have if you have those challenging times. The disadvantage is I'm paying more in interest potentially if I make every single payment. Okay, and that's the advantage that the 15-year can bring us. Okay, but otherwise we do have a little bit more flexibility. So I think with all that, I think that's wonderful. And if you guys have any other questions regarding this, please reach out to Scotty and myself. We'd love to help you.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Yeah, like, I'll put Mark's information down below. Thanks again, Mark, for joining us on this discussion. Check out me and Mark talking a couple other videos. We have, like I said, we have one on REOs. If you're interested in doing some real estate investment, Mark really did a great job of breaking down a lot of that real estate owned properties. Check out that video. I'll link it below. And then we're going to have another video on about, is your home really an investment? And I don't think Dave Ramsey's going to like that one either. Thanks so much, Mark, for joining us. And as always, we're here to bring you real life experience to all your real estate needs.
That's it.